Okay, Rebecca, it's 5 o'clock. We agree on that?
Yep, we're all set.
Okay, we'll call the meeting to order, and would the clerk perform roll call, please?
Commissioner Hardwick,
Here.
Commissioner Jones,
Here.
Commissioner Rob,
Here.
Commissioner Schultz,
Here.
Commissioner Turk.
Here. Great, looks like everybody's here and accounted for. All right, the next item on the agenda is a review and possible action relating to the minutes of the June 1st meeting. Would someone like to make a motion to approve the meeting minutes?
I'll move to approve.
I'll second.
So we have a motion and a second. Are there any additions or corrections? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you. Item number 4 is a review of possible action relating to hiring of top candidates from the hiring process for volunteer positions for the fire department. Chief Lawrence.
Yep.
Good evening.
Can you make sure the green light is on there?
There you go. Better.
Thank you.
Good evening. Early June, we conducted a hiring process for paid on call firefighters and paramedics. Through that process, the team interviewed 7 candidates. 6 were selected to move on to the physical agility test. Those 6 all passed with flying colors. So I'm looking for your approval, provided these 6 candidates pass a drug screening, background test through the police department. The 6 candidates are Ashley Vickers, Bridget Peachy, Casey Badura, Tyler Davis, Sabrina Taramino, and Dakota Thompson. 2 of these people will be Ashley and Bridget will be on the EMS side only. They're paramedics. So it adds a little depth to our EMS side. Additional to our EMTs have all the fire certs needed. And 1 other person has entry-level fire. So 5 of the 6 could actually go to work tomorrow if we had a call and they were approved with little work on our part.
I will just clarify that these are paid on call members. These are all paid on call members. These are not full-time appointments.
Okay, thank you for that.
Where would this put the department for paid on call staff numbers? If you add these 6?
We've had 1 resignation, so it'll put us in that total department 45-ish for
Okay.
including the 15 full-time people.
Which is a comfortable
Yes.
number.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that higher than it has been? It seems like a good number.
It really has been pretty stable for the last 5 to 6 years.
Okay.
Our biggest challenge is the time the calls come in and people's work schedules. Most people or a lot of people seem to work outside of the city, or they work in the city and aren't able to leave work. So that's where the issue comes in, is their time to be able to respond.
That makes sense. Thank you. Are there any other questions for Chief? Hearing none, if there is someone who'd like to make a motion to approve the candidates that have been recommended.
I will move to approve the hiring of the top candidates from a hiring process for volunteer positions as presented.
Thank you, Megan. There you have a motion. Is someone like to make a second?
Second.
Second, Dick Schultz. Is there any further discussion?
Chief Lawrence, do you want to confirm that these would be a 12-month probationary status? Do you want that noted in the motion or just?
Yes,
like that
in the
written
motion,
in
please.
the moments?
Yeah.
Okay. So the bottom of the memo is noted to have the top 6 candidates appointed 12-month probationary status effective July 1st, 2023, pending successful completion of background investigation and drug screen.
I will amend. I move to appoint these 6 individuals on a 12-month probationary status effective July 1st, 2023, pending successful completion of background investigation and drug screen.
And I also
Thank you.
will second. I also will second the amended motion.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you both. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Great, motion carries. Chief, you can let them know they're approved. Okay, moving right along, item number 5. Rebecca, this is the review and possible recommendation to the city council relating to the proposals for the fire chief recruitment process.
Yes, so you have in the packet were 3 proposals, 2 additional proposals were provided, were submitted, I should say, by the deadline. Those were emailed out to the PFC on Friday. Also emailed to the PFC was a table outlining and summarizing some of the information in those 5 recruitment proposals. Some questions did come in today about the process, this process for selecting a firm. What's on the agenda today is possible recommendation to the city council. If this body does not want to recommend any of them to the city council, that is your choice as the Police and Fire Commission. We do not have the capacity internally to run a recruitment of this nature. Michelle and I are the HR team. We have no individuals dedicated to any sort of HR aside from us. So that is why we requested to submit a request for proposals and receive proposals for this recruitment process. Some of the other questions that were presented, does the city have funds available? Yes, I have identified a couple different funding sources, including the salary savings for the chief position, as this will likely take between 3 and 6 months to fill the role, even when we net out the additional salary for the interim chief role. There is still funds available to run the recruitment. We also have, there's some administrative expenses in the EMS fund that could be used to pay for the recruitment as well. We do not have a competitive wage survey for the fire chief position compared to other communities. We would be looking for assistance in recrafting the job description, as well as putting it at a point that both fits within our compensation package, as well as, I should say, our compensation structure, as well as something that would be competitive externally. Commissioner Turk also asked some questions today just about the position description. Just to answer some of those questions, this fire chief position did also serve as the emergency manager. However, for whatever reason, that was not included in that job description. So I would anticipate working with a consultant to redo that job description to include those emergency management job duties, and also to include any other additional knowledge on the EMS side that would be required now that the position has changed. Basically, this was the position description that was included in the last packet. That draft position description really was based on when we had a paid on-call department. It was not updated in a meaningful way to reflect the fact that this is now a hybrid full-time and paid on-call department that includes EMS service. And then again, those emergency management duties. So the job description does definitely need some assistance, which is why I included some language in the request for proposals for a consultant to assist in recrafting that job description.
Great.
If there are other questions about process or about the proposals, the commission can certainly discuss the proposals. I was able to check a few references yesterday and today. It was a very tight time frame, as as you could imagine. But I was able to talk to a couple different people who had experience with these firms. I will say that everyone I talked to recommended that we do use the assessment center as part of the recruitment process. So there are a couple that had that. The two that, I mean, and this body can certainly discuss, but as far as a staff recommendation, the two that I would look at more thoroughly, and the that I did check references for, I actually checked references for items 1, 2, and 3, McMahon, McGrath Consulting, and GovHR. I think that McGrath Consulting and GovHR are both are at the top of, they would be at the top of my list as far as which to hire for this process. But if the commission would like to ask questions or discuss or go through individual proposals, please do so now.
I'd like to share
Okay.
that. Oh, sorry. Can
No,
I share?
Go ahead, Jean.
Okay, thank you. I was just gonna say that those top 3, out of those top 3, 2 of them was what I had to, that I marked off and what my notes were.
Sure.
Okay.
This is difficult, but I do have a question. How are we for internal candidates?
We have not, I mean, we haven't advertised the position.
Mhm.
So I don't know where we are as far as internal candidates. I know our interim chief is intending to apply for the position. If that's the question. I don't know if there's any other candidates
and see-
internally who are interested in applying.
For me, that begs the question, do we need to go through this process?
I mean, I, certainly no disrespect to Mike. I think he knows that I respect him very much and hold him in very high regard, but
Yeah, and
I-
it's difficult to have that conversation.
yeah, but I
Especially-
certainly don't think we want to set any sort of precedent with such an important department that if there is one qualified internal person, that we just leave it at that and
No,
we
the-
stop
The city
there.
did hire a city manager not too long ago without going through the process.
that's incorrect.
No, it is correct.
Oh, Matt.
No,
Trubetowski.
I'm not referring to her.
well.
No,
Yeah.
I'm referring to Matt Trubetowski.
And I would say putting us through the process put us in a much stronger position than we were in that instance, would be my comment there.
I guess I'll just share, I think it's healthy if you look at all options. I mean, I think about when hiring teachers, or when we know someone really well, yes, but we give everyone a fair chance just to make sure we're making the right decision. I think it's healthy.
No, and I understand the process. I said, when we hired Evie, we went through that process. Of course, that turned out to be a mistake. But I just, if we go through the whole process with a clear choice.
But I don't think we have a clear choice if you don't go through that process, I think is the
And that's a
point.
good point. I think it.
I guess my question, I will be totally honest that and maybe this is just because I am not in this HR realm whatsoever. I was very surprised to see the expense related to these services. And I guess my concern more so, and I totally understand staff capacity and time and all of that. But just in reading through a lot of them, they all mention, I think at least most of them, really kind of keyed in on the necessary involvement of staff or of police and fire commission or both. That part of me just worries a little bit about investing this big chunk of money, but then a lot is still going to require your involvement anyhow. I mean, a job description can't be compiled strictly by a search firm. I mean, to me, that has to be guided by our city leadership. Presumably, every interview that would be scheduled would have you involved, would have at least one, if not multiple members of our commission involved. That's the only part that concerns me in terms of kind of the cost benefit analysis of it, is how much are we paying for that staff is still kind of guiding anyhow? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, that does make sense. I think the hiring team would be the police and fire commission and me.
Yeah.
So that group would be in all of the interviews, because it's ultimately the PFC's decision as to who to hire for that role. So as far as staff time, I mean, I guess I don't know the difference between staff time in me running the whole recruitment and having a consultant run it and be a part of it, right? I mean, it's probably less, the latter is less staff time. But there would be certainly, there would be staff time, there would be fire department staff time involved. We want to make sure to make the right decision. And that would involve additional people. It's inconvenient to have to fill these roles, right? But we have to do it.
I just wanted,
That's part of the job, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, one of my questions is, or comments is, just because you have a recruiter doesn't necessarily mean success in a candidate. That's a given. And we work with recruiters a lot. So they are very expensive, as you pointed out, Megan. Or is this group, and I wasn't able to determine, are they able to cast a net to attract a broader scope of candidates than we would be able to do on our own?
I agree. That's what something that's coming to my mind, like McGrath, they have like this range of how much this costs. So if you look at the 15,000, what is included in that 15,000? Is it just like, do they just get names for us? Do they just advertise it and then we do the rest? There might be a happy balance.
The 15,000 includes, for McGrath, includes the executive recruitment. It includes everything in their proposal except that assessment center testing option. Okay, so that assessment center is an additional $18,995. However, they provided a discounted rate if you get both of $23,325. So
But the packet for that one it's an applicant packet, the candidate screening, the reference checks, and the interview.
right, and that's for the and I will say I did talk to a couple of references for GovHR and for McGrath. And those are some of the questions I asked, right? Did you feel like they brought you additional candidates that you couldn't get on your own through some of these things, some of the resources that are out there? I talked to the village manager in Menominee Falls. He said that they used GovHR for their interim services, and then the full recruitment, they ended up hiring that interim for the full-time role. He said that the Tim Sashko has a very deep pool, and that they already have a pool of candidates for some of these things that they work with, and so they did have a wide net. Mark is the village manager in Menominee Falls. He did recommend that the assessment center that we use the assessment center tool. I also spoke to Patrick in South Milwaukee. He said that that they did use a different firm prior to GovHR. They actually used McGrath the first time around, and it was not successful. And they used GovHR the second time around. And they got some new names of new people applied from between the first round with McGrath and the second round with GovHR. He said that they have a stable of applicants that they're courting ahead of time for these types of positions. So all of the references for GovHR were very positive. And they all said that they would use GovHR again. For the McGrath references, I spoke to the HR director in Wisconsin Rapids. And then I also spoke to Robert Stedman in the South Shore, at the South Shore Fire Department. Robert is actually a part-time consultant for McGrath, so obviously he was very positive about the services that they provide. He said he's been doing fire EMS studies with McGrath for over 20 years. So he also said that there's a lot of chief openings throughout the state, and McGrath can find folks from Wisconsin who are looking to stay in Wisconsin, not necessarily this, retired Illinois chief moving to Wisconsin thing, which sometimes is a thing. He also said that McGrath serves as a long-term resource for, once you have their services and you establish a relationship, that they do answer questions when things come up and continue to look at things if you ask them to. Ryan in Wisconsin Rapids said that they had good internal candidates within their department, and they did end up hiring an internal candidate through this recruitment process. He had said that Mike Streed was the main contact who would be our contact for McGrath if the city hired McGrath. He said he did a very good job. He was in-depth, well-planned. And the assessment center is definitely worth doing. So both positive reference checks for McGrath and GovHR. As far as the other firms go, it was McMahon not as positive of a reference check. The person I talked to indicated that they are wonderful people, but they likely wouldn't use that firm for recruiting again. And then the other two firms, CPS HR Consulting, was I didn't check those references for them due to the fact that they didn't have any Wisconsin recruitment experience. And then the Angels Recruiting Agency, I didn't check any references for them. They had no fire chief recruitment experience whatsoever. So I did not check references on those two.
I still question, going back several years, I was on PFC when we hired Tony Bruss as police chief. And I'm pretty sure we did not use an agency. We just advertised and reviewed the candidates. I was on city council when they hired Adrian as police chief, so I don't know. I don't remember using. Is it necessary for us to do that? I know it's a lower level, of course, but when Adrian wants police officers, he's got places he can advertise and review the candidates. And is that something we're able to do? Are there professional magazines for firefighters that we could advertise and review ourselves without getting involved with high-priced recruiters? I don't think we've discussed that. We've just, and I know it's more difficult, and I'm, but it seems to me that's what we've done a a
I think-
lot passed.
One of the comments, I guess, that come to my mind when in looking at all the proposals, first of all, GovHR was more in detail than any of the other ones. Whether the assessment center is necessary or not, when in looking at the steps that they do and the depth of the analysis that they do of the individual, I'm not necessarily sure that that is needed at this point. Maybe that is a caveat that if we get down to, say, 2 candidates that we just really can't make up our mind on, we run them through the assessment center to help us make that determination. I think a personality profile is significantly less expensive, probably in that $150 range, where you could do a personality profile that will tell you a whole bunch about that particular individual. Positives, negatives, strengths, weaknesses, that sort of thing. But speaking, Dick, maybe to your thoughts about whether or not we need a recruiter or not, I think the city has made a commitment, a significant commitment to the department and the depth of what we're looking at running in the department. And we want to make sure that with that in place, I think we want to make sure that the individuals that we're looking at are going to be of quality to be able to do that. I think your question about, do we have the capability to do that? And I think your answer was there wasn't any comment about yes or no, whether or not we could do that, because we don't really know. And that tells me that we have a weakness, not in a bad way, but just in a weakness, whether or not, where do we go find a good fire chief? We might, quite frankly, have a good candidate here in play, but let's find that out. Let's make sure, I think we have a due diligence to the citizens of Fort to do the job right. And yeah, as Philip indicated, we're not gonna have a guarantee, but we have a good backdrop here. When you look at the cost per hour, they're looking at spending 175 hours. It's less than $150 an hour. If you were to go out and hire an HR consultant, you're going to be spending anywhere between $150 and $250 an hour for an HR consultant. And it's going to depend upon the issue that they're dealing with. If they're dealing with a harassment issue, or are they dealing with hiring an entry level person for the position? Depends. This is significant. And this is a 45-member department, a range across all different things. Now we're into medical. Now we've got requirements there that we have to make sure that we plan on. I think, and this is not money that we're spending to have to add on to the budget. It's
Correct.
already in the budget. We have a chief that's gone. We've already budgeted for that money, correct?
Correct.
If we weren't in this position, we'd be spending that money anyway. So my thought is let's pick the best consultant that we can to help guide us through that. It's a wash as far as money goes. And it's not over and above. When I looked at this, GovHR rose to the top because of the depth of their proposal. I probably wouldn't do, if it was my decision, I probably wouldn't do the assessment right away. I think that's an exorbitant amount of money. However, that was one of the things I highlighted, and I said, what is this for that amount of money? And when you go look at it in the proposal, it's in depth. And I would argue that $8,500 that they have in there, it's going to cost us more than that, because there's a stipend you've got to pay for the people that they're going to bring in to interview the candidates. I'm not sure that's in there if it gets drawn out. They're talking about doing 4 or 5 people. I think if we go to a consultant, as I said earlier, I think that maybe is our end arrow in our quiver, that if we can't decide, if no candidate rises to the top and it's like, yes, that's the one we want, we can't make that decision, then run them through the assessment center. Maybe it's then only 2. That might only cost us $3,000.
Yeah, I mean, and they would likely be open to that. As far as, signing a contract that is just for the recruitment services and then potentially adjusting later.
Well, we could put it as a part of the contract as an option.
Right. We
We can either take it or leave it.
And the other, they would probably be open to some sort of personality inventory, right? I mean, GovHR does recruitments, executive recruitments for all various fields in the public sector. I mean, they are exclusively public sector, but they, I'm sure that they have more resources available as far as testing, personality testing and inventories and things of that nature that they could, if that's something that we ask them to do, I'm sure that they could do that.
And it would be kind of nice to know what that cost would be. CPS does have that in here.
Mhm.
It would be kind of nice to know if they have that, what would that cost be? Because maybe as a baseline, maybe we run all the candidates that we really want to consider through that personality inventory assessment, so that we have a baseline to start with. That may weed out some of the individuals that have been selected right there. And when I'm saying if that weeds it out for us, we aren't having to spend as much time and money of you guys having to weed through things.
Sure.
Let that maybe tell us. It's not a perfect science, but it certainly could give you ideas to think about. Didn't see that in the personality, but it says so in the inventory, so.
Mhm.
Yeah, this is a very good discussion and Russ, I think you bring up some excellent points. And I think the other point is, we've got to recognize that we've got to, we can support the city here because 170 man hours is a lot of time, and it would take us probably double that, given that we're not expert in this process. In the end, we want to hire the best candidate for the community. And I think that personality test and we've used those as well, can be a helpful indicator. And I know from past when we went through hiring Daryl that we had some candidates that had we have known, we probably wouldn't have spent the time with them or they with us had we have had that information. I don't know, Megan, if you remember that, or Dick, if you were on the council then, I can't remember, the commission.
No, I wasn't yet at that point.
Okay.
I think I had just missed that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So are there other thoughts? There is a number of points that are out there in the discussion. Is there?
Well, if he comes back, I will ask. And Russ, maybe this is a question for you, or certainly for Rebecca too. So McGrath and Gov HR were the top two that I had noted, just going through everything. Gov HR's presentation was definitely more thorough and extensive with full examples and things, but I didn't necessarily see a ton of difference in terms of the actual scope of work, in terms of the actual services provided. So
Right.
I'm just.
I'm sorry, I lost everybody. Sorry, I just got back.
No, that's fine. I was just asking, I had just said that Gov HR and McGrath were the top two that I had in kind of my ranking. And that Gov HR's presentation and submission was definitely more thorough and more detailed, but I didn't necessarily notice that much of a difference in terms of the scope of work or the services that were offered. And with it being almost $11,000 difference, I'm just curious, either Russ and things that you saw in there, or Rebecca and kind of your review or going through with the references, if there were things that you think really kind of speak to what that difference in the overall pricing was.
I'll jump in if you don't mind.
Yeah.
So in looking at McGrath's, page number 2 is company qualifications and recruitment services, okay? Excuse me, page number 3. Page number 4 is the recruitment, about what they're gonna kind of do in brief. Then on page 5, they go right into the assessment center. That's page 5. Page 6 is continuation of the assessment center. Then it goes into what their staff qualifications are. Then page 7 is continuing staff qualifications and then references. And then it gets into the pricing and some other services.
Mhm.
To me, it didn't tell me about what they were going to do.
Sure. And I guess
They
I
spent
was,
a lot of time on the assessment piece
Yeah.
of it, where it seemed like Gov HR talked about this is what we've done. This is the places we've had recruitments with. These are some of the candidates that we filled. They gave a more in-depth knowledge, broader in-depth knowledge of what the process could be.
Sure.
Likely, to me, it spoke to, they've been there, done that, and they
Yeah.
probably understand that it's going to take 175 hours to do it.
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking. To me, McGrath left a lot open-ended, because they talk about, they don't know how long it's going to take. It's not provided. What happens if we get into them
And it's more,
and it's all of a sudden
Yeah.
now it's 22
yep,
and they're not done yet?
yeah. No, that's a good point.
And plus, they didn't meet the requirements of the RFP.
Of giving the hours.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I can't believe how many didn't.
There was only
That
two
was,
did.
yeah, that was
Yeah.
a surprise to me.
I mean, it was a pretty thorough request, right? We did want, we wanted examples of the
But I would think
recruitment
that's a pretty
brochure and
basic element
contract.
of feedback to give of this is our expectation of the number of hours that would
Right.
be invested in this.
Yeah, I mean, because when you get a contract that's not to exceed, I mean, it's good to have something to base
true.
that on, right? I mean, so
Yes.
if you just get a contract that says, oh, it's $30,000 for our professional services. Okay, how many hours do you anticipate? Who's going to be working on it? What are their
Right.
wage rates? What are you charging? Those types of things. So
Did you request that from them at all? Like any of the ones who didn't provide that hour breakdown? Was that?
I did not.
No,
I did
okay.
not circle back and request additional information.
It seemed, excuse me, it seems to me
Then I
that,
wouldn't,
seems to me that McGrath is putting a lot of credence into the assessment center. Because if you look at what the assessment center cost is, it's more than twice of what GovHR does. And so I think GovHR is going through some of that stuff themselves. And they're putting it into their cost because the costs aren't that far apart when you look at the assessment center and what McGrath's initial cost function is. The other thing that I really liked about GovHR is their recruiter seems to be significantly knowledgeable.
Well, he's a past fire chief, isn't he?
Yeah,
Wasn't that the
I
one
mean,
that
and
had-
the recruiter for McGrath is as well a former fire chief. Though what I will add though is there was a section in the GovHR proposal that Tim identified current issues, current challenges in recruiting for fire and EMS chiefs, and he did identify those and basically explain how he intends to overcome those challenges with this recruitment.
That's what set it apart for me, just their philosophy and what they knew about future for fire and department in that role. That really just caught my eye compared to McGrath.
yeah, they did the most comprehensive proposal of anybody, without question. Are we at a point where we need to have some more discussion, or do we feel as though we can make a recommendation to the city? In other words, would someone like to make a motion to recommend one of the recruiting firms? And what I'm hearing, well, I'll let you guys come up with a
I have one more
recommendation.
question. I'm sorry, Philip, I have one more question I wanted to ask.
Okay, I'm sorry, Jean. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So for budget, it is budgeted. Can you share what's budgeted right now?
So just to clarify, this recruitment is not in the budget because we didn't realize that we would have to be recruiting for a fire chief. So, but what I will say is that looking at 6 months of the fire chief salary account and then netting out, so subtracting out funds to support an interim chief for 6 months leaves us at about $40,000. So, and then there is, we have an account in our EMS fund that is EMS administrative expenses that we have not used funds out of that account yet. There's $15,000 in that account. So we could, and that is a separate fund that's in our EMS fund supported by the revenue from the EMS program. So whereas the fire department salary account is a general fund account paid for by general tax dollars, the EMS fund is a different fund. different revenue source, we could use a portion of both. Or we could save that EMS admin expenses. I guess what so there's basically $55,000 that could be used for this effort.
And potentially to,
Yeah, it does not include the savings and benefits.
sure, okay. And potentially to be included in making this a more appealing position
We,
going
I,
forward,
I know that we will need to change where this position is on our salary, on our pay grade.
Yeah.
I know we will have to change that. We will have to change our expectations relating to salary requirements. And that will be something that I think the finance committee will take a look at coming up with the budget process, because there will be some other adjustments that need to be made as well during, if that changes, a couple other things will also need to change.
If I may ask the city manager, you're the one that has to work with this agency.
Right.
Is there one that you're more comfortable working with than the others?
I would feel comfortable with both McGrath and GovHR.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
One last question, sorry.
Sure.
So that $55,000, if it's not all used for this recruitment process, can it be used in other areas, or is it earmarked just for this process?
It is not earmarked at all for this process. There's funds in a salary account, and then there's funds in an EMS administrative account that we budgeted, not knowing quite what to expect in 2023 with a brand new department and a brand new expenditure accounts. So that money, the EMS admin expenses, will surely be used at some point in 2023, if not for this, for something else. And if there are any, savings or any unused funds in the fire department salaries account, it will likely either be used somewhere else, or it will, it will roll over to fund balance at the end of the year.
When I went through this, frankly, I had some of the same reactions you did about GovHR. I think that was the one I was most impressed with, not that there was anything wrong with it. I would like to move that we recommend GovHR to the city council as our recruitment.
Is that with or without the assessment center?
Ooh, we can do without the assessment center, couldn't we?
We could-
It could be an option, though.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, Russ made a
Having
good
that as an
point.
option, I think is, to me, that's important.
Yeah.
That we could engage that if we need to. I would hope
Yeah.
that we don't have to. But that would be,
Okay.
and I think especially just looking at the stuff they list under the candidate evaluation and screening, I mean, they go into internet, social media search, they do, I mean, it's not. I think given the extent of what they do in that area, kind of to Russ's point, unless we get to a point and we go, we don't know.
right.
Okay, then we need an additional layer, but my assumption is with everything they have included here,
It's gonna
I feel like it's
clarify.
gonna be pretty clear
Okay, let me
to our
amend my
group.
motion then that we recommend to the city council contracting with GovHR, with the assessment center being a possible option, but not necessarily.
Okay,
I can second that motion, Mr. Chairman.
thank you. All right, there is a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. That's the recommendation to city council. Okay. Rebecca, is that's it for the agenda today? Is there anything else to come before the commission?
I will just update you with the police department recruitment. The additional candidate did not pass the physical tests. So Chief Bump will be restarting a recruitment process.
For the
For the
official, for the
position.
actual position?
Yes.
And not the, okay. Well,
That's the eligibility list person, right?
Yes, the person that was on the eligibility list, they did go through the physical testing process. And that person did not pass. So Chief Bump will be starting the recruitment process over for the open position in the police department.
And Rebecca, did Chief mention he'd like to have 2 interviews, an early and a later interview? He sent me an email earlier today, and I need to pull it up. I'm sorry, maybe it was yesterday. Gotta find it here. Yeah, the email was I'd like to have 2 interview dates, one on July 13th for early applicants that meet the minimum qualifications. And then if we have additional applicants that come in by the deadline, we again interview on the 20th of July. He suggests that he would like to have the same PFC member for both interviews for consistency. So I wanted to, since you brought it up, to determine if there was somebody, if that was an acceptable process, but 2, a individual on the commission who would like to participate in those. And it would appear, I do not know because I haven't talked to Chief, but they may have a candidate in mind. And I know that timeliness is everything in this day and age, and being quick to react is an advantage. That's my takeaway without having talked directly with Chief. Rebecca, does that make sense?
That does make sense. I have not talked to Chief Bump about the matter. So I didn't know that he was looking at interviews.
Yeah,
the
well,
process.
yeah, it was just a quick communication, I think, knowing that we had a commission meeting tonight. So anyway,
If both days were in the afternoon, I could certainly be on the list of available people. I'm not available the morning either of those days, but I am in the afternoon.
okay. All right. And would there be a backup?
Philip,
If
what's the
maybe-
second date?
The 13th and the 20th.
13th and the 20th.
Yeah,
Both
I
Thursdays.
can be back up.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm here.
All right, so great. And Rebecca, I will copy you on that reply to Chief with Megan in the afternoons and Jean as an alternate on that. Thank you. I think that'll just help expedite the process.
That works.
Great. All right, anything else to come before the commission?
Move to adjourn.
Second?
I'll second.
Russ, you second. Thank you. All in favor?
Hi.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you all very much.
Thanks, Phil.
Thank you.
Against that.
Yep.